Donald Trump approved the firing of 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Syria without UN Security Council or American Congressional approval. Weeks earlier, American troops invaded Syria without the permission of the Arab nation, and just 5 days after Trump had said regime change was no longer US policy on Syria. The surprise attack on Shayrat air base near the Syrian city of Homs followed unverified claims that Syrian President Assad's forces used chemical weapons which killed civilians. Trump's missile strike killed civilians. Yet despite this, other world leaders praised the US attacks. The British Prime Minister said, "The UK government fully supports the US action, which we believe was an appropriate response to the barbaric chemical weapons attack launched by the Syrian regime and is intended to deter further attacks." German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande said in a joint statement that President Assad alone must bear responsibility for the strike. In contrast, Syrian military officials called the US airstrike an act of blatant aggression, saying it had made America a partner of ISIL as the base was used to conduct strikes against the Takfiri group. Foreign policy experts say the US bombing of Syria was done in part to deflect attention from the president's growing list of problems at home, such as his campaign's alleged ties with Russia, his failed healthcare changes, and his blocked travel ban. Many of Trump's far-right supporters were angry about the military strike, criticizing the president for abandoning his election campaign promises. What caused Trump to take military action against Syria without a proper investigation or UN approval? And why did he decide to do this after promising not to? Simple questions with important answers. Now, Trump's not doing well in domestic polls, and he's failed in a number of his policies. Is the attack on Syria a way of distracting the public from his failures as a president? And why do people think what they do? We put that to the American public.
A thing that should have been handled, if it was necessary militarily, it should have been discussed better and not bragged about. And it should have been done with consideration for innocent people and victims.
I think it is. Also, I think that he's not very well versed in Middle Eastern affairs at all. So I think that this unpremeditated attack on Syria is just showing his unpreparedness to be in office, honestly.
I don't think it's a distraction from it, because he's saying it was an answer to an attack that happened over there. So, and I'm not really sure that he's failed yet as a president. I mean, he's 100 days. I mean, other presidents went 4 years and they did a lot more than he's done.
Well, first of all, I agree with I strongly disagree with that question. The polls don't mean anything. The stock market's going through the roof. Jobs are being created. The economy's doing great. The markets are doing great. So the polls don't mean anything. The polls also said that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide. So what your question doesn't mean anything. And what he did in Syria, I feel, was justified, because what Assad supposedly did was terrible.
I think what Donald Trump is trying to do is portray himself as a strong president. And in contrast to Barack Obama, his predecessor, who really had no coherent policy in regard to Syria. And therefore, by ordering the bombing of the airbase outside Damascus with the 59 cruise missiles, conveying the impression that America is the military power in the globe which is exerting itself. You have to also factor into this the dropping this huge bomb in Afghanistan, the attacks in Yemen, and so on. However, it's also a high-risk strategy for Trump, because he was elected on a ticket of no more foreign wars, particularly slating the decision to invade Iraq in 2003. And people voted for him on the basis that there would be no more adventures like that in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what we're seeing now is America precisely doing that. So for many of his voters, those who voted for Donald Trump, this will not be particularly popular. So The calculation must be that he will benefit from being seen to be strong, and that will offset the loss of votes among those who don't want any further military adventures. It's also very much about exerting America as being the #1 superpower in the globe once more.
We have seen some stunning policy reversals. Incredible flip-flopping and wobbling. We have a wobbly bridge in London. Maybe we can call Trump the wobbly president, because all these changes, the stunning U-turns. So what's happening here? He has disappointed actually even many of the people who supported him during his electoral campaign. Why is he doing it? What's going on? Well, as you asked, is it because to divert attention for his own domestic policies? Well, actually, Trump has not been doing all that bad. Yes, he copped out completely over the question of banning citizens from southern Muslim countries. That was not brilliant. But, on the other hand, he has appointed his own man to the Supreme Court, Judge Gorsuch. He is going ahead with the wall. U.S. economy, apparently, jobs are being stimulated and so on. It's not as bad as one might think. I think here there is something more. There is something ideological, or maybe there is also some, I have to say, dark forces at work here. I mean, what kind of interest are pushing for Trump to be involved in a Middle East quagmire? Is it perhaps the Netanyahu gang in Israel? Because here we have a geopolitical dimension. Or is it because the Trump team, the generals, he has appointed so many generals, is it because the generals are now calling the shots?
Trump claims to care about the children of Syria. Meanwhile, the US is currently supporting the Saudis' military action in Yemen, where children have died as a direct result. Why does Trump not seem to care about those children in Yemen? We asked the American public.
You're looking for consistency in the wrong man.
Have you heard of anything, him saying, I don't care about children? I've never heard him say anything like that, so I don't know.
I have no idea. No idea. You know, if they would allow them to immigrate into the United States, then none of that would have happened.
I think that he's doing what's necessary to help these. These people do not want to be refugees. They want to be free in their own country.
Well, first of all, let's make it clear that the care for the children of Syria is rather limited. If you're here in Western Europe, I'm speaking in Britain, where lone children refugees are currently being barred from entering this country. Refugees without parents have made their way to the English Channel or to elsewhere in Europe. So the sympathy for child refugees is limited. But secondly, you're right to argue what is happening in Yemen is a humanitarian disaster on a scale comparable and possibly even greater than Syria. It's a refugee problem, a humanitarian problem, an ecological problem, a military problem. And the Saudi bombing campaign, the deadly Saudi bombing campaign, which can only be carried out with the help of the United States, Britain and elsewhere, using the drone technology and the warplanes they've sold to the Saudi Arabians, is absolutely murderous, and it's adding to a dreadful and appalling humanitarian situation about which the West says absolutely nothing.
All children are important, but some children seem to be more important than others. He shed tears almost on television, looking as if he was emotionally touched about the children of Syria. And we don't know yet why those children died, because it is no means clear who was responsible for this ghastly chemical attack. But the children of Yemen who have been under attack by Saudi forces, by bombing, missiles from the air, bombs and missiles supplied by the West, by the United States, and indeed by Britain. So why have the Yemeni children not mattered? Why not? Why this incredible contradiction here? It could be that at the end of the day, it's power politics which rules. You really pursue what you believe to be your own interests and disregard completely the lives of others. But here, in fact, I would maintain that it is not in American interest to be sucked into foreign wars. I mean, whenever America has tried to fix the problems of other nations by military force, disaster has followed.
Why did Trump take military action against Syria without a proper investigation into who carried out the chemical weapons attack and without UN Security Council or congressional approval? We asked the public.
He's not big on checking facts.
I think that we know who carried it out. It was Assad. But I think that he should have used more care in deciding things.
I mean, honestly, again, I don't think he's well versed in any type of military attacks or anything. He has no experience in foreign affairs. So I honestly think he did it because he just doesn't know what he's doing, honestly.
Well, there's several different things here. One, he doesn't need congressional approval or UN approval to do this. And he turns to DOD to say, what's the investigation? What do you say happened? And then they said they gave photo proof of the planes that did the attack and where they came from.
He had the advisement of his military. And I feel that if they advised him to do it, I'm confident that he did it for the right reason.
Well, I think it's an interesting question because the United States likes to lecture every country in the world about international law, but it has always refused to be bound by the United Nations, and it always treated the United Nations with some suspicion. It's always refused to sign up to international laws which would mean its service people would be subject to trial for humanitarian offences, and therefore it's not really concerned. The United States has never been that concerned about the United Nations, as we've seen in the past. However, I think as well, this is Trump really is sort of saying the United States will do whatever it wishes in order to promote its own interests. And it is not going to be bound by international law. It is not going to wait for any investigation as to what happened with this chemical weapons attack in Syria. It will take its own unilateral interest. And as I say, this is Trump trying to portray himself as being a strong leader, but also as reasserting the right of the United States of America to intervene whenever it wants, wherever in the world.
The case that it is these generals who he has appointed at top levels in his administration, are they calling the shots? Someone said, war is too important to be left to the generals. Now, I'm afraid it looks as if the war is too important, too serious, too grave to be left to the president as well. Now, Trump has a background as a millionaire businessman, as a maker of deals, as a kind of the Apprentice-style TV programs. But does he really has a grasp on foreign policy? Does he really understand? I have to be plead guilty here because I actually was for Trump in the run-up to the elections. I thought to Hillary Clinton would have been a disaster, but she was the one who was going to be more and more beating the war drum, saber-rattling, and likely to drag the country into foreign interventions. Now I'm aghast. I see that it looks like the other way, but it looks as if Trump is also falling into the same trap. So this is not good for the world. This is not good for America either.
Trump's Syrian missile strike killed 9 civilians, including 4 children, a significantly higher death toll than during the recent terrorist attack in Westminster in London. However, critics of the American attack blamed anti-Assad terrorists for staging what is called a false flag attack, intended to look like the responsibility of the Syrian government, even if it was carried out by someone else. The lack of independent evidence makes the issue uncertain. During his presidential election campaign, Trump promised to avoid military operations against other countries and said he would not launch attacks against the Syrian government. Why, in the public's opinion, does he appear to have done a total U-turn?
I don't know why he does what he does. I don't know if anybody knows why he does what he does.
I mean, campaign promises are just that. Like, they're campaign promises. So once the campaign's over, I think he's going to do what he wants to do. And I feel like since he's unprepared, he doesn't know what he's doing, the best way that he seems like, that he wants to show that he's prepared to take the presidential seat is to show military aggression. And so I think that, honestly, his attacks are just displaying that he doesn't know what he's doing. And the best way that the way he understands presidency to work is through war and military aggression. So.
Oh, I think he knew from the beginning he was going to do a total U-turn. I don't think he is standing for anything that he claimed in his presidential debate that he was going to. He's a terrible president. I hate him. Didn't vote for him. And he's not what America is.
When you get all your facts, and that's kind of where the president gets all the facts where the public doesn't, you find that you can't hold true to what you say in a campaign because the facts weigh heavier than your promises.
He said in his campaign that he would never telegraph what he was going to do, so that is an untrue statement. He was not going. Said he would never telegraph what he was going to do.
Well, I think what we saw was that Trump making very strong statements in his campaign that he would not get involved in Syria, and now he is getting involved, which is going to create confusion and some fear among those who voted for him. But I think there's a problem, and I think why, as I keep saying, that this is Trump trying to show the United States is military strong and will do whatever it takes. There is no coherence as to American policy in Syria. It is currently carrying out attacks on Daesh, al-Nusra Front, and now the Assad regime. It's a civil war in Syria. What on earth the Americans are trying to do here, I don't think anyone really knows. So while it's Trump projecting the American military power and saying he'll do whatever he needs to do and use that power whenever he needs to do it, there is no coherence with the policy in Syria. And what seems to have happened here is that Trump has gone back and seen Daesh as being the main enemy in terms of American interest, and now re-identifying Assad, which is precisely what Hillary Clinton, his opponents in the presidential elections, and the establishment in America have always wanted. They have wanted to intervene in in Syria to bring down Assad. Regime change has always been on their agenda.
It's an amazing, incredible, devastating kind of flip-flop. It's a wobble, which is unbelievable. And yes, it has antagonized, disappointed the people who supported him, amongst whom was actually even myself. I'm not American, but I thought Trump was going to be good for international relations. Now, there is one important factor. In the Trump team, there is still a man called Steve Bannon, who was his top strategist. Now, Steve Bannon is hated by the liberals, by the Democrats, exactly because his vision of the world is not a vision of where America should be the world's policeman, but is a more of a vision of nation states. It's nationalism as opposed to this disaster internationalist model which forces the military interventions across the world. And Bannon had that kind of model, conception. Bannon, and here of course I'm sort of reiterating the general view, Bannon was a loggerheads with Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law. It seems that Kushner, there has been a power struggle within the administration. Kushner has prevailed. Kushner has links with the State of Israel, of course. But so Bannon now seems to be marginalized. So this chief advisor, who, in my opinion, promised well for a sound and sane reorientation of American foreign policy, now has been relegated to the background. There may well be one reason why this has happened.
A number of Trump's liberal critics actually supported the bombing of Syria, which killed 9 civilians, including 4 children. Why, in the public's view, have some American liberals supported the bombing of another Arab nation?
Because even the liberals are against ISIS and what ISIS does. And we all support a free democratic government in Syria. And ISIS and Assad are the 2 enemies to that.
They don't understand how the U.S. government sometimes is, a terror in other countries, and And yeah, I think a lot of liberals just don't have a lot of nuance when it comes to understanding the history of imperialism and how the United States has had a hand in that. So yeah.
I don't know. I can just speak for myself as an American, and I don't support bombings of, especially when other children are involved, without full investigation being done. I felt as though if it was for the Syrian people, to help Syrian people, it may have been handled differently. I think there might have been a different approach to provide more help.
I think they agreed with the reason why he did the bombing, and he targeted a military base, not a civilian population. And I think that's kind of why they supported it.
I think what Assad is doing is ferocious. I don't think any civilized people could justify what he's doing, and he has to be stopped.
I think you have to understand that the establishment in the United States and his Democratic opponents in the presidential election, Hillary Clinton, have always pushed for a regime change in Syria. And that was always a priority. It was toppling the Assad regime, which is why they were prepared to arm and back the rebels in the way they did in the Syrian civil war. In the final months of the Obama campaign, the picture became more confused as the rise of Daesh meant that America became also focused on that. And there was a constant tension between these two aims, one of toppling Assad and one of dealing with Daesh. It was never fully resolved. And at the heart of that, it was also the question of how America approached Russia once it began intervening militarily into Syria. And that has never been resolved. As we see now, with the heightened tension as a consequence of the missile strike on Syria and Assad's airbase, that has increased tension with Vladimir Putin in Moscow, something that Donald Trump said was not going to happen. He was going to rebuild relationships with Putin. He's gone back in that, as he's gone back, as I say, on his general policy in the region.
The Democrats, the sworn enemies of President Trump, actually cheering him, and it says a lot in whose interest this reversal of policy is. Because the Democrats are far more warmongering, saber-rattling, keen on foreign interventions than actually the Republicans historically. And the Democrats are even more in cahoots with the aggressive policies of the Netanyahu gang in Israel than the Republicans traditionally. I remember President George Bush Sr. actually incurred the wrath of Israel because he wanted to make military aid to Israel dependent upon Israel actually make concessions on the question of settlements of Palestinians and so on. But this Russian element is used as a cudgel, as a stick by the Democrats to attack Trump. And then again, there is a geopolitical element because Russia is in favor of a multipolar world. Traditional imperialism wanted America to be the only, the unipolar power, only one power, only one big stick, only one ringmaster cracking the whip. But other nations like Russia, like Iran, like China indeed, want a multipolar world. It is not the case there should be just one big boss telling everybody what to do, but the countries should have a variety of power, so the power cannot be concentrated in the hands of only one nation. And so the people who are opposed to this much more, if you like, paradoxically democratic way, which is not just one single power, several powers, are actually trying to cause as much trouble as possible.
German and French leaders claimed that President Assad's repeated use of chemical weapons and his crimes against his own people demand sanctions, which France and Germany already asked for in the summer of 2013. The UK government also backed Trump's action.
The president attacked Syria despite promising to resist foreign military excursions. Critics claim the whole incident was intended to distract people from the president's domestic policy problems. Outside America, it seems to have worked. But inside America, his actions have turned many of his own supporters into critics of Donald Trump. The law of unintended consequences strikes again.